This is David Sable. I'm going to try to respond to this question: what three words are involved in making change for good? I'm going to take it to mean to take the question in two ways. The question could mean change for good, meaning lasting change, or it could mean change for good in terms of what we value as good. And in either case, I think what I'm going to describe applies. And the three words are actually three, you could say, processes. It's listening, inquiry, and dialogue. And by listening, what I'm talking about is a little different than what we're perhaps commonly used to doing. What I'm talking about is being able to listen mindfully so that we're aware of our own judgments while we're listening, so that we're aware that we're very typically trying to figure out whether we agree or not. And we may even be figuring out what we want to say right in the middle of listening. And all of those things that ordinarily take place get in the way of really hearing what someone else is saying. We're in the process of interpreting them even before they've finished saying what they're saying. So the first part is really being able to listen to people, we could say fully or mindfully. Being able to listen so that we could actually, if called upon, to say back what it was that the other person or people were saying. And that actually has a lot of feedback for us if we go through a process with other people like that. It shows us, first of all, how well we were listening, and it shows them, on the other hand, just how well we heard what was said. Second part of it, inquiry, has to do with being able to ask questions equally mindfully, without trying to lead another person or a group of people into understanding our point of view. Inquiry from the point of view of really checking what it is that the other person meant from their side. What was the context? Why did they say what they said? What did they mean when they said ABC? When we get to inquiry at that level, what happens is people begin to feel like their side is being respected and understood. And when people make a connection like that, they feel like they're being listened to, and questions reveal that someone's really trying to understand their point of view. A lot of the familiar habits that get in the way of mutually agreed upon change, a lot of those habits begin to dissolve. Not necessarily go away completely, but they begin to dissolve to the point where there's real communication happening. So mindful listening, mindful inquiry, and the third part is dialogue. And a dialogue is really a flow of meaning between people. It's not winning an argument. It's not getting our point across. It really has to do with finding new meaning from the present moment. So I come back to this sort of foundation of the whole thing, the issue about mindfulness and awareness. In a dialogue, what's actually happening is that we're creating something from present experience, which means to say that the meaning is being developed by people in the present moment, whether it's a group or whether it's with individuals. What's happening is they feel the connection between themselves and others, and that's the backdrop, rather than my agenda, my initial purposes. This means that we have to be open to change if we want to see change happening. It can't mean that I'm just going to go about changing others. It means that our frame of reference, even how we're framing our problem or how we're framing our issue, that also has to be open to change. So from my point of view, what does it mean to say good change? I think it means change that comes from a real dialogue, change that comes from understanding what it was that someone else was presenting and having them respect and trust us well enough so that they could listen mindfully and that they could inquire what it was that we meant. And when you exchange in that way, you set the stage for a real dialogue. It takes some training. It takes some practice to do this. But when it happens, people come to a feeling of connectedness not because they're in agreement. They actually come to recognize a connection because they were both doing a kind of work that they respected. You could say, recognizing that someone else is doing the inner work sets up a corresponding kind of a resonant feeling in yourself. And when two people recognize that in each other, the meaning of that connection is based on an experience. It's not just on a conceptual agreement. It's actually something that sets the stage for a dialogue so we could find a common commitment. Where it is that we could act together, agree on a decision together. And it may not mean that we agree perfectly or we agree about everything, but we find a path through to being able to work together with another person or with a group. And this, one could say, well, this must take a long time, and who has the time to do all that? Actually, I've been doing this for years with students who have no training in mindfulness or meditation in the university setting, and they come to feel this connection amongst themselves, even having done this process once or twice. And it doesn't depend on a great deal other than this willingness to try to share meaning with someone else. So there's, you could say, mindfulness and perhaps a degree of humility. So that's the 5-minute introduction to what I have to say about listening, inquiry, and dialogue, which I think are the 3 processes that are so important for change for good.